think it's time to get underway. So welcome to Cyberfest 21. I think this is our 8th event, Northeast's biggest cybersecurity festival. So running throughout September, so past the halfway mark, I suppose all downhill from here. So we've got something for everyone. And as I said, this is our 8th event, something a bit different for us. It's the first time we've ever done an interactive workshop for those thinking about creating a cybersecurity business. So we've got 4 speakers today. Thank you very much. And hopefully it's a very interactive session. Sophie, who's doing the magic in the background, is going to promote you all to panelists in effect so that we can have that proper interactive discussion. So Sophie, could you put on to the next slide, please? So this is the format for today. I'm going to give you a bit of an introduction into Cyber North and what we're up to. Some of you may have heard it already. Then we're going to be followed by, oh, and I forget, yes, sorry, Jane, I've just been thought of. Yeah, so Yvonne was going to talk to us. Jane has stood in kindly for us and will talk to us about raising finance. Thank you very much. Second, we've got Hannah, who's going to talk about finding the right people. Then we'll have a short break just for convenience. And then we're going to be joined by Peter Thompson from Department of International Trade, who's going to talk about trading abroad. And then finally, we've got Simon, my good friend Simon Hansen from NEPO, who's going to talk to us about competitive tendering and dealing with the public sector. Next slide, please. Okay, so Cyberfest is brought to you by Cyber North, Dynamo's cybersecurity cluster for the Northeast region. We're supported by Accenture and the Innovation Super Network, and we're recognised by the Department for Culture, Media and Sport and the National Cybersecurity Centre as represented in the region. We're also a member of the UK Cyber Cluster Collaboration, which does what it says in the tin, and I'll come back to that. And Global Epic, an international collaboration of cybersecurity clusters. So we're kind of making our mark not only within this country, but around the world. So we're working to grow the industry across the region to position it as a great place to do cybersecurity business. We're working to grow jobs, highly skilled, well-paid and interesting jobs. And we're doing this in 4 ways. The first is we make a lot of noise to raise awareness and build belief. We do this through events throughout the year, culminating in Cyberfest, as I've said, the Northeast's biggest cybersecurity festival. And we've certainly made progress, I think, in this area. The second thing we're doing is helping existing businesses to grow in a collaborative yet competitive framework. We're working on mechanisms to support this and bring opportunity to the 70 or so cybersecurity businesses that operate in the region. The third thing, and I guess this fits in here, is to create new businesses by developing a cyber innovation centre in the region. A full business case is with the central government now, and we're waiting to find out whether funding will be made available. But my understanding is that everybody in central government is waiting to see if funding is available. And the fourth thing that we do is we support young people into careers within the cybersecurity sector. So we undertook a large piece of work earlier this year with the support of DCMS, and we'll be working on the plan to address skills as soon as I get out of Cyberfest. Next slide, please, Sophie. I said I'd come back to UKC3. This is an exciting new venture, bringing all this UK cybersecurity clusters together, following a process of recognition, about 20 that we're aware of, and just under half have been recognised. We're working on, Cyber North has been recognised, and one of 8 or 9 that have been recognised. And the focus of UKC3 is really around ecosystem, innovation, and skills development. So really the very things that we've just talked about. We've been given some funding from DCMS, which is really exciting, and a small amount of financial support, which we've used to put together a team to help us to develop the Cyber North offering over the coming months. So for the next 6 months, we've got some people working for us to get a better understanding of the market that we have, how we engage better with the market, get a clearer direction of what it is that we're trying to do. And final slide from me, Sophie. Thank you very much. So a quick introduction to Cyber North. There's an awful lot going on. If you're involved in the regional cybersecurity scene in any way, please be a part of it. Right, thank you. Now, having forgotten completely, I'd like to introduce you to Jane Siddle. And, sorry about that, Jane. Would you like to come up and talk to us about raising finance?
Yes, indeed. I'll just need to share the screen first, please. So basically, yeah, hi everybody. My name's Jane Siddle. I'm an investment executive. I've just jumped straight from there to there, but we'll leave that slide on now. So I'm an investment executive at NEL Fund Managers. So what I do is I help businesses to secure funding for growth and find the right support to enable them to achieve their growth plans. And what I've found over the years is the key success factors to sustainable growth are having the right strategy, the right people, the right product or service and the market need and the ability to execute the plan, but also essentially the cash to do it. And also it's been demonstrated that being active in the networks, whether the professional or the webinars like this kind of thing, does have a positive impact on business growth and survival. So my plan over the next, is it 20 minutes or 15 minutes, Phil?
We've got 30 minutes in total, but if you could talk 15, 20, it's fine. Then
right, okay. So I'm going to talk through stages of growth in terms of how you finance the life cycle of the business, the support available to small businesses in the Northeast, about the Northeast Fund and where NEL sits in that Northeast Fund. And then the funds that we manage two funds, which is the Small Loan Fund and the Growth Capital Fund. And then what we look for in businesses to help them in order to access funding. So just a quick, I'm sure you're all familiar with this is just a chart that I've picked up off the internet, but it kind of does describe quite well about the financing, the life cycle of businesses. And as you can see, pre-start businesses, generally you're going to use your own cash. If there's any grants available, proof of concept, that kind of thing. That's how you get to startup. And once you're at startup, you might be able to access some startup loans. At the moment, British Business Bank have a facility for startup loans, so you can access up to £25,000, fixed interest rate at 6%, repayable between 1 and 5 years. And you also access free mentoring, and it's government backed. So that is one way to do it. Alternatively, you can go down the angel networks, or again use your own cash. Our funds, certainly the Small Loan Fund, can help with some startup funding. In fact, that is one of our targets in the Small Loan Fund. So again, but it's very difficult because you still need to demonstrate traction to the funder to demonstrate that you can service debt. So it's very difficult, I'd say, early stage and startup. And once actually you have, you're on that startup phase, you can access more debt funding, or there might be some seed funding out there. Generally, what I would say is you would use your valued advisor. So whether it's your accountant, finance broker, mentor, advisor, I think each business is different, but there are lots of different types of funds out there. Kind of my focus really is around the growth expansion phase for businesses. At NEL, we sit in the alternative funding space. So we sit behind the traditional lenders that you'll come across, like the banks or the asset finance providers or the invoice discounters or commercial mortgages. So we sit behind that. So where you can't really access, or you've reached out at your max at that, the alternative funding market's quite active. So there's a lot out there. And NEL's just one of the funding providers, and then beyond that, it's venture capital. So it's private equity type houses for businesses that are kind of scaling fast. So that's just a brief trot through. I'm not quite sure who the audience is, but if you're kind of a small SME, hopefully I can provide some insight into in the next few minutes. Oh, actually, I've got my slides back to front. So that's kind of essence where I was taking everybody. So what I just briefly want to cover off now is that you might find interesting is what general support there is out there for kind of growth and innovation. So you might have heard of a few of these. So the Northeast Growth, it's an online platform. and it's delivered by the North East Local Enterprise Partnership. And quite often I signpost businesses just to have a look on that platform to see what other types of support might be available to businesses. So it's got detailed sections in it on finance and funding, on business support, events and insight. And there is a team of specialists that can assist. So, you know, it's useful just to keep asking questions if you maybe is not getting anywhere. You know, I find it a good source just to kind of check, you know, if there's any other type of support out there. It was actually quite useful during COVID just to see, you know, what maybe you could access. The Northeast BIC, so they provide support and development and for growth of SMEs, innovative entrepreneurs and startups. The latest from the BIC is that they've secured additional £2 million of funding from Innovate UK to further encourage business angels to bring investment and expertise to innovative small and medium businesses across the North. RTC North, they deliver a mix of programs such as the Scale Up Northeast and Innovation and Growth programs. They can help businesses to compete and to grow and help you overcome the challenges. I mean, NEL is a SMA. We access support through RTC on, you know, programs kind of we're trying to deliver. So there's something for everything, I'd say there. TEDCO, again, offer support to businesses to start and grow and achieve sustainable business success. So they run the Durham Startup programs and the Business Factory, and they're also a delivery partner for Virgin Startup Loans. Local authorities, again, each of them are able to offer support. Business Northumberland deliver a number of programs driving business growth. Business Durham deliver a number of programs. They have a 20 million investment fund that's managed by Maven. And then across South Tyneside, North Tyneside and Sunderland, there are various other initiatives. So, you know, I think it's quite fragmented accessing finance or accessing support. So, you know, I think it's a kind of useful pointers. Again, I've just listed some of these. These are by, you know, there are lots of others as well. There's the NatWest Entrepreneur Accelerator. They have a business builder support that supports early stage entrepreneurs. And Barclays Eagle Labs, again, they offer co-working and office space and business incubation for high growth businesses. They can offer mentoring support, access to networking, workshops and raising finance if needed. And then you've got MBSL, which I suppose most people would recognise as their go-to, you know, support in terms of accessing some grant funding or fully funded workshops. And then you've got UMI, who provide funding programs, and there's a number of certainly that I've come across capital grant schemes. So that's just a flavour of the support and possibly some grant schemes that are out there. So Northeast funds, the current active fund is the Northeast Fund. There's 120 million out there covering 5 funds. NEL manages 2 of those. I've previously mentioned the Small Loan Fund and the Growth Capital Fund. But also there's 3 other funds. There's the Innovation Fund managed by North Star Ventures. They invest up to £500,000 by way of loans or equity. You've got the Venture Fund, which is managed by Mercy Asset Management, and they can invest up to £1 million in any stage of the business life cycle, but specifically for those firms engaged in innovation and developing disruptive business models. And then you've got the Development Capital Fund, which can invest up to £2 million, and that's predominantly debt finance, but can be mezzanine, equity, anything, I guess. They're kind of looking at dynamic businesses with strong management teams and ambitious growth plans. So that's just a little flavour of the other funds in the region, but I really wanted to focus on what NEL are doing. So we manage the North East Small Loan Fund, which is a £9 million fund. We're looking to invest in 320 companies over 5 years. We're just at the end of just finished year 3 investing. And the North East Growth Fund is an 18 million fund, and we're here to support at least 70 businesses with funding. So far in total, we've invested in 163 businesses and invested over £15 million. So we're active. We're always looking to try and, if we can't invest, we try and help. So that's kind of our remit, is to try and help. And also we are an accredited lender under the Recovery Loan Scheme, which means in the current climate, where businesses are still looking to grow but can't access the traditional forms of lending, we hopefully will be able to assist. And if we can't, it's all about trying to support in whichever way we can. So in essence, just a brief trot through kind of, the funds. We are a social impact investor, so it's all about helping creating prosperity in the region and creating jobs and any other positive outcomes that are associated with that. So we can only invest in the Northeast, which doesn't go down to Teesside, but virtually is everywhere else. We are predominantly a debt lender, so it's all for us. It's about looking at the people and what it is that you do, but it is about, can the business service debt? And I will come on to that a little bit later. So we want to help businesses to grow, so it's about the people and their ambition. We can help virtually in any sector apart from property development, and our funding, it's commercial lending, even though it's ERDF backed, and so it's all unsecured lending, and we don't take personal guarantees, but it's based on level of risk, or assessed level of risk. So it's not just about the computer says yes or no. We're very people facing, interactive. We look at various things. We look at financial performance, historic and forecast. We're interested in what the sales and marketing plan is of the business. We want to know what the market opportunity is and what the track record's been. And what we're really also interested in is people's willingness to engage with professional advisors and the support networks. We think that has a huge impact on success. And then one of the other things, so just briefly at the bottom, we've got the Growth Capital Fund. So basically it's lending up to £500,000. And then the Small Loan Fund is lending up to £100,000. That's a temporary threshold. It was raised during COVID just to try and fill in the gap. So one of the other things that we do is support, where it's about, for us, it's about not only investing in businesses, but supporting. So, we're involved in 3 hours of support, we call it, whether it's progressing with an investment to completion or just helping a business and give them some support in terms of signposting. And we're involved in providing some workshops as well. So our successful programs, I guess, have been our Let's Talk About Money involvement. I think we've run several workshops recently. There's one in process at the moment. We've run a Purposeful Health Growth Accelerator in conjunction with Northumbria University, and we run various other webinars or strategic roundtable events. So we're always keen to have interested businesses come along and access these free programs, if it just provides some insight. So just moving on, I'm probably going to just focus on the small loan funds specifically, and then I'll quickly trot through at the end a little bit on the Growth Capital Fund. So I guess frequently asked questions, you might be wondering, is my business eligible? I mean, I'd say most businesses that we come across are eligible. All I'd say is you need to be a small or medium-sized enterprise, and really that means less than 250 employees. We can support limited companies, partnerships, or sole traders, as long as you're VAT registered, really. we which prefer to support limited companies, but as I say, we've supported partnerships, and interestingly, currently we are looking at some sole trader businesses, as long as who are applying for funding for more than £25,000. Generally, we prefer businesses that are profitable or near profitable, but that's a whole story in itself. So all I'd encourage is, if you are thinking about funding, is more about picking up the phone and just talking through your business journey with us, and explaining what it is that you're looking for, and we'll probably have a better idea as to whether we'll be able to support you. And I mentioned it earlier that we can help with startups. Our definition of a startup is 12 months from incorporation. So really would like to see some form of track record, at least a few months of trading. And what I would say is that types of startup businesses we've supported below £20,000 are much easier to progress than startups that are above that level. So, because ideally what we want to be able to see is a little bit of traction, understanding who your customers are, what the working capital cycle is, understanding whether the business can generate cash and therefore can service debt. As I say, most businesses are eligible except for property development. And some businesses clearly in the last 18 months or so have been loss-making, but have demonstrated previously that they can be profitable. So, just because your business might be loss-making currently, it doesn't mean to say that we wouldn't be able to support, but that's the whole reason why we're accredited with Siddle, but we also are accredited with Recovery Loan Scheme. So, we still can assist, as long as there's some visibility on positive cash flow going forward. Some of the other things you might be interested in is how our funding is about growth. So it's about how can the funds be used. So they could be used for working capital. So that's kind of a term just in terms of servicing your purchasing of stock, your debt, your customers paying, and you paying your creditors out. So it's that cycle, but sometimes it's a positive cycle, because if you're a cash business from customers paying as you sell, or if it's customers paying after 30, 60, 90 days, it's just important that we understand, what the working capital cycle is. We can help with businesses relocating. And we see this quite often, actually, more maybe early stage businesses where they're looking to move into their premises for the first time. So we can help with that, which might mean, that there's the cost of the lease, there's the once you're in the unit, there might be additional costs to fit out, etc. So our funds can be used for that. Funds can be used for new equipment or machinery. And quite often what happens is as your companies are buying new equipment, they need to pay a deposit on the finance in order to finance it. So our funding can help with that. We can help with development of a new product or a new service, or entry into a new market, because there's always additional costs for this type of activity. We can help investment in new technology, so whether it's investing in an app, or improving your website, or moving to an e-commerce platform, or just generally investing in IT infrastructure. The funds can be used for that. We can help with promotion of research and innovation. One of our focuses actually is on low carbon technologies. We don't see it very often, but it's a huge, it's obvious at the moment that low carbon is a key. It's very important to the economy. Our funds can also be used to unlock grants. So a recent investment we made was used to acquire a new plant, and that unlocked a capital grant. So it just meant the project could progress. And I mentioned before that kind of all the proposals we would like to see, in all the proposals, would like to see increasing staff levels. Although job safeguarding is also a valid measure at the moment. Our remit is to invest in good businesses in the Northeast. So types of businesses we've invested in, we've invested in a winery, a technology business, software development, consultancy, HR, design and creative type businesses, a soft furnishings designer, knitwear designer, digital marketing, fabrication, joinery, engineering, virtually any type of business you mentioned, we've probably already invested in them. So I've got a few case studies here, just a kind of snapshot into where we are with the small loan fund. And that kind of just gives you some headlines as to kind of what we can do. So on the left is asbestos audit. The front there, you've got Ben Pickard, who's the director. My colleague Mike Gillard's on the left. So they act as a main and a subcontractor on asbestos related projects of every size. So what they needed, we invested £50,000 in the small loan fund to help him to grow his team and to enhance his presence around London. So whilst the business is based in the Northeast, lots of their contracts are kind of outside of the region. But also it wanted to expand what the business was doing into air monitoring and clearance services as well as the asbestos removal work. So the one in the middle, so that's Nourish Bud. My colleague Jonathan Armitage is on the left. So you've got Rebecca and Luke Tonks in the middle. So we invested, how much was it? £25,000 into their business. They'd actually, interestingly, they quit their jobs in accountancy to travel the world back in 2018. And they were inspired by the plant-based diet options. And so they decided to set up a business in North Tyneside. So the funding was to help them extend their delivery routes and recruit a full-time chef. So, you know, the funding can be used for any purpose as long as it's around growth. And then the other is we put £100,000 in the small loan fund into GME Industries. So they specialise in designing, installing and maintaining a wide range of commercial and industrial electrical services. So so basically they focus on green energy and energy in energy efficiency sectors. So the funding was to help with vehicle networks and charging infrastructure projects. So, you know, it just gives you maybe a flavour of the broad range of types of investments we can do, but also the quantum. So from that was a case study of 25k, but we've done one as small as 7,500 and to the top end of 100,000. So hopefully a reasonable range to get an idea as to what's what. So briefly, how do I apply for funding? We have a simple application form. We have a template business plan, and if you're applying for less than £50,000, basically all we need is a 12-month cash flow forecast. If the business model is quite complex and you're looking for more than 50,000, we always need more robust, comprehensive forecasts. That's kind of a separate discussion. You know, it's a higher level of funding, so therefore there needs to be a higher level of scrutiny, I guess. So the investment process, so what we do is the business plan is typically, I mean, if you've got your own, that's easy, but in essence, what are three areas that we look at is about the team, the finances and the commercial and the market opportunity. So we're kind of rigorous to a point, but we're practical. So our assessment of the team is based on if there are any CVs, but mainly just on how the discussions ongoing during the investment phase gives us some insight into kind of the ability and capability of the team. And I think it's much easier if the business has been trading longer than a business that hasn't been trading so long. But it's a lot of it's not necessarily an objective view. It's just based on kind of conversations, etc. However, the financial performance is definitely an objective view. We much prefer to see historical trading performance. So financial control from our point of view is really important. And it's much better if it gives a much better impression to us if there's a sound financial position and you're able to produce your monthly management accounts and you've got your year-end accounts and you're able to produce a reasonable set of forecasts that describe the narrative to the journey of the business and where it's expected to go. And then from the commercial market point of view, what we're interested in is we need to understand what the sales forecasts are, what are they looking like and where this growth is coming from. What's the marketing plan behind it? And what is the market opportunity? What gap have you spotted? Why do you think it's going to work for you? And basically what we do is we appraise on those key areas. And once we're able to do that, we're able to issue heads of terms, which tells you what the cost of the money is and any additional little bits of diligence we might need to do. And the process takes about 3 to 4 weeks, so it's a pretty quick process, I'd say. Local decision making, just within the investment team at NEL. So not too complicated, and we're always happy to talk through how it works and what we need. I suppose one of the questions people always ask is, what is the cost of borrowing? Well, clearly for an alternative lender like NEL, it depends, but we are really very transparent about cost. Pricing is based on risk, so it will be higher than what you might be able to access down the traditional routes, because our funding is unsecured and we don't take personal guarantees. So what we focus in is what the funds can help you achieve, and how we can support your business to grow and the ability to service debt. So I'll just give you a brief example. For example, a loan less than £25,000 at NEL, there's no engagement fee costs. So if you were looking at a £20,000 loan to grow the business, and you want to pay it back over 4 years, and we felt as if this business might be medium risk, it's either low, medium or high risk, that's kind of our categories of risk. The interest rate we use is 9.5% above the UK reference rate, which is currently 0.17%. So that's a bit of boring detail, but basically monthly servicing cost on a £20,000 small loan fund, unsecured loan, is £504 a month. And it's as simple as that. And, obviously the higher the level of request for funding, the cost of the money might be a bit higher. And also it depends on the term. So our funding is generally 3 to 5 years. And also once the funding is above £25,000, there's an engagement fee of 1%, and that increases over the quantum of the borrowing because there's more diligence to do. So that, obviously happy to answer any questions around that if you'd like.
One, Jane, if you I think we've had one from
you did?
Yeah, are you taking applications from CICs or is it just limited companies or businesses or?
Community interest companies. Well, we can, but often whether it's our funding is most suitable or not, I think that's the question. It's because it is commercial funding, so it's about why would a community interest group want our type of or need our type of funding? So it's about growth and job creation. It's about suitability. So there might be other funds that are better suited to our type of funds, but we always have that discussion about whether it's appropriate or not. So I'm not going to. That's the growth fund, bigger lending, but in essence, a bit more complicated, and recovery loan scheme if anybody was interested. And they're all our details for the whole of the team. So I shall stop sharing.
That's great, Jane. Thank you very much. Is there somewhere where people can go to get access to know all the types of funding that are available? Is there a single source of information, or do they have to?
Well, I think the North East Growth Hub's pretty good. I think all the funders are generally listed in there, because you can categorise what you're looking for. If you're looking for a certain level of funding, it gives, in essence, it kind of drills down into who the best funder might be. So yeah, I think, but it's very fragmented space. What I would also say is, if you've got a proactive advisor, there's a number of local accountants are pretty well tuned into what type of funding's available for businesses.
So you'd always recommend getting some professional advice to help you out with this, yeah?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. It's okay, just, obviously there are funded, there's lots of free support out there, so it's just tapping into the right people initially. Lots of businesses are happy to pay for their advice, so they'd speak to their accountant or their advisor. And quite often advisors are happy to give some of their free time as well. So but we do the North East Fund do funding clinics as well. There's a couple of engagement officers at the North East Fund who often go around the region. So they're available to speak to and to pick their brains as well. So it's a bit like a pyramid. So they often go, "Oh, Jane, I've spoke to so and so. Will you speak to them? Because I think your fund's the right fund for them to speak to."
Okay. And what do the guys do in Teesside then? Is there something similar down there?
Yeah, so Teesside is so that's the funding there is the British Business Bank. So ours is European Investment it's European Investment Bank. It's the Jeremy 2 programme. So Tees Valley decided to go with the British Business Bank. So it's the likes of FW Capital manage similar funds down there, and there's a couple of other funders as well.
Well, thank you very much for that, Jane. Actually, we've run out of time for this, but if anybody has any questions, because they put them into Q&A, and if we don't get through them today, we will answer them and publish them online. We're going to start publishing some of the responses from the event on the 7th of September on Monday, so we'll give us a full chance to answer those questions. So if you have any questions, please put them either in the Q&A or the chat, and they will get answered, if not within the confines of this presentation. So thank you very much for that, Jane. Next up, I've got Hannah, who's going to talk to us about finding the right people. Are you there, Hannah?
Hopefully I can help, yeah. I mean, I must admit, and I must warn everyone that my presentation is in no way anywhere near close to Jane's in-depth detail there, but it does lead very nicely on kind of what I'm going to talk about. So I'm assuming, Phil, that you planned that very nicely.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
So I'll share this quickly, and it'll just give you a bit of an insight. So, as I said, when I start to share, chances are I probably can't see people's face or anything, so please feel free just to kind of interrupt me, put any questions in, and just ask me as we're going, because I think that sometimes helps quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, as Jane kind of rightly said, we're not entirely sure, we can't really see who's kind of behind the screen at the moment. So as I say, shout up, but hopefully this can help a little bit. So recruitment is fairly simple, in all honesty, and it really does kind of boil down to three main points of recruitment. So the first of that being actually attracting the person that you kind of want to look at. So it's actually taking a step back, not just looking at the people that you want to recruit, but looking at the business and looking at what you kind of offer. So actually, have you thought about the location that your office is in, for example, if you haven't already got a permanent office? Have you looked at kind of the funding available for those locations? Have you looked at the accessibility for different people getting to the offices? Is there good bus links, trains, car parking, things like that as well? All of those little things play a massive factor. Especially now we're in the new world of post-COVID, hopefully. We're not going to go back into that. But certainly that's played a massive impact, because the North East region saw quite a detrimental impact actually because of COVID. So what we saw a lot of was that a lot of the roles became remote. So we automatically started a battle for candidates on London salaries. So a lot of our kind of North East staff tended started to have a look at London roles because they were fully remote. So people, we saw people getting kind of a 25% pay rise, and we couldn't really fight against it. So there was those kind of challenges in amongst kind of COVID and how that affected things. I personally think that we'll see that start to balance out over the next kind of 12 to 18 months. Don't quote me on that because, we can try and predict things as much as possible. But yeah, have a little think about, is your business going to be a permanent on-site role all the time? Can you offer some flexible working? Can you offer some remote working or even part remote working, create a hybrid model? Because we've got to remember that, not everybody does want to work fully remote. Not everybody does want to work in the office all the time. So this new kind of coming out of COVID and this kind of hybrid working, it does seem to kind of, it seems to be looking the way to go almost. So, that's also a level of attraction for anyone that you might be recruiting. And then what makes your business stand out? Have you got kind of any nice perks? A lot of companies are doing things like unlimited holidays. For example, I mean, I kind of work for Scott Logic as well, as a technical recruitment partner. They do a personal development budget, so every single employee in the business gets a personal development budget and a couple of days to do that as well. So if they want to go and do a conference or whatever, we've got that. Is that something that you can, can you get someone interested in the role because of what you offer? And have you done your market research as well? So have you had a look at a competitor, for example, even just kind of the people in the region and or in your location. So for example, if you want to set up in Newcastle or Durham or even Teesside, have you had a look at the business around? Have you had a look at the kind of skill sets in the hubs? Have you had a look at, actually how many people are in that particular network? How many different channels can you use to interact and engage with that person as well? So all of those little tiny bits go into that level of attraction, of actually, trying to, it's not even that engagement piece, it's actually just how can we get someone looking at the company? How can we get somebody looking at that role? So that's kind of that's always the tricky part. And that's always, once you can get that attraction part, the rest of it's easy. So it's always just kind of looking and breaking it down into that, actually what's going to make me stand out? What's going to make my company the company to work for? Once you've kind of got that, it's looking at that source and engagement piece. So, what kind of ways are we looking to advertise? We've got a lot of different platforms nowadays, and it's kind of a minefield. So we've got things like LinkedIn and LinkedIn Recruitment that you can pay premiums for. You can kind of pay job ads and things like that. You have your platforms such as Indeed, Reed, Total Jobs, things like that. You have company websites, obviously, and that kind of engagement. And you also have the really dreaded, that nobody really likes to use, your recruitment agencies. And, it is sometimes worth speaking to kind of a handful of them, because agencies shouldn't be charging you for advice and just kind of that initial, little bit of benchmarking, a little bit of kind of help in that respect. Agencies shouldn't be really trying to charge you for that. So just kind of use them as a bit of a network, a bit of a guide and things like that. And, if you do want to engage with an agency, they'll look to help you with that agency, that advertising side as well. You can also look at, different marketing packages with other people as well. And then on the engagement piece, similar to the attraction piece as well, it's actually how are you going to sell your role and company? Because as much as it's not a sales pitch by any means, trying to get people to come into your business, actually you really want to do, the interview process is a two-way process. You are much as trying to kind of impress them as they're trying to impress you, because at the moment, cyber is a very, very small cluster, and certainly in the North East, it's very, very small. And if you look at the UK as a whole, Newcastle is a very kind of minute section of that. So you will be fighting people from all over the UK, not just in Newcastle. So actually what makes you stand out, and how are you kind of going to sell that role and your company? Have you got things like career progression? Have you got, like interesting projects? We did a bit of research just before I joined Scott Logic, so it's part of my business at Williams, and I did a bit of research of what are people's main motivators for going into the job, and the top three were projects. That came out top. It was the projects and what they're going to be working on. Salary was in there, unfortunately, and also kind of that family work-life balance. That was really important. So the three main things that came out of that were those basically. So it's actually how are you going to incorporate that into when you're talking to people and kind of selling that role. And then also think about the interview process. at the minute, you will find that people are snapped up quicker than you can engage with some people. And it's the unfortunate fact that just kind of is the situation at the moment, and probably will continue. But if you can have a look at your interview process, and I always try and encourage people not to do just a one-stage process, because sometimes that second stage, that second opinion, it means a lot, and it can actually help you from making that kind of rash, that's the person that I want, that quick decision. Sometimes that second interview just kind of highlights, there's some really good points, or some points that make you kind of think, I'm not quite sure. So 2-stage interview process, we kind of recommend, is a really good solid foundation. I think once you start looking at that 3rd, 4th stage, then you start to lose people. If you start to do kind of things like technical tests, you've got to kind of place them in the right environment and set people's expectations from the start, really. And I think that really boils down to actually setting people's expectations, because 99% of the population, touch wood, are reasonable. So if you do set some expectations, things tend to work out well. And then the final piece of recruitment that people don't necessarily align with recruitment is actually the retention. So looking at that retention of, actually keeping that regular salary benchmarking, what's happening in the region, what's happening across the UK. Are my employees going to be happy? I brought my person in on X salary, I brought them in on X benefits. If you try and keep them on that for kind of 2 to 5 years, there's a probability that things might start unsettle slightly. So that regular employee check-in, that regular market research, and that benchmarking is going to set things apart. And also, people kind of have this stigma of actually competition is really dangerous, and it's competition for a reason. But there's nothing stopping you from actually being quite friendly with your competition and understanding, as a recruiter, we always get told very much like, you are in this and that is it, and you can't talk to the recruiters. But I'm the very opposite. So I speak to a lot of different consultancies. I speak to a lot of different tech companies, and I ask them what's happening. And people do big things up, and you've got to take things with a little bit of yourself. But you can get a good idea of actually asking people what the challenges have been. Learn from other people's mistakes. You don't want to be the first person that makes that mistake. So ask. Don't be frightened to do that. And certainly going back to kind of what I was saying about the agencies do try and kind of help that as well. So yeah, I mean, that is a very kind of whistle-stop tour, and I'm very conscious that I want to be more interactive and kind of answer questions. So I did see a question pop up because I've got the presentation, I can't see it. So I'm just going to stop sharing a second so I can come out and have a look. There we are. Brilliant. Was the business located near Manchester for the finance part, I think, I'm assuming?
I think it was for the finance part, yeah. But please don't be shy. Let's come forward and ask Hannah some questions. But I've got some for you if that would help. So, why should people use a recruiter, Hannah?
So, I mean, I must admit, use your recruiters at the last resort. Always try and do things for yourself first. But at the end of the day, the recruitment agencies are there to help you. Try and do some due diligence. Try and ask around. Ask some of the companies who they might recommend, because you will find that. Recruiters in general, not bad people. I think we do have a generally bad reputation of, people think actually recruitment are just trying to get you money and things, but that's generally not the case. I mean, I can speak from personal experience where actually it's nice just to see people going into other companies having a really good job that they enjoy. Actually, using agencies, they have a really solid network. So generally what you'll find from an agency is they've been around for a couple of years, or they've come from places where they're setting up their own business and things like that. They've already built that network. They know the people to speak to. And actually, sometimes the cost of paying an agency fee beats the cost of not having that person in the business, because you've really got to weigh up sometimes. And just as a general tip, the market in the Northeast tends to be on around about a 15% agency fee. So the candidate, it doesn't cost anything for the candidate, but generally for businesses, it's typically around about the 15% mark. And what that means is it would be kind of a 15% fee of that person's salary for that first year. So that tends to be typical, but it could range, and you can do it various ways on retainers and things like that as well.
But I suppose the balance then, are you going to invest to get somebody who's good, or you're going to try it yourself and that risk?
Exactly. And I think the other benefit to the agencies as well is if you look at the cost of, paying for LinkedIn adverts, if you're looking at paying for job adverts, if you're looking for the time invested in kind of shortlisting and actually speaking to people, that agency fee doesn't actually look that big when you break that down, because the agents they'll advertise everything for you because they've got all access to the job boards and LinkedIn and things like that. Most of them should have LinkedIn Recruitment, which means that they've got a bigger reach for messaging and headhunting people. So there is that element of time piece, but also actually that cost. It does sound a lot when you say kind of, 15% of someone's salary, but actually when you break it down, the cost of it doesn't work out too dissimilar.
Excellent. So I've had a question from Stuart. Smiles, are you there? Would you like to come up and ask Chris? I know you're not shy, Stuart.
Sorry about that. Job descriptions and their reflectiveness of role and budget for improvement or ability to change things at the new organisation.
Yes. So, I mean, job descriptions, they are a huge, huge element of the role, in all fairness. And, you can ask other people to help you with that, especially kind of your agencies, if that's what you're looking at. If you are talking in general, I know that some job specs tend to be more general than they are kind of specific, and they don't really kind of get to the point. So it's trying to understand from a recruitment point of view, if you are the employer, it's really it's pinpointing actually, yes, let's get everything from a job spec of that perfect person, but actually really stripping it back to what is it you need. And sometimes if you put too much into a job spec, it scares people off. So if you have something that's a little bit more specific, a little bit kind of lighter, it does generally get more, it just generally kind of get a better reception from that. And then obviously I'm just kind of reading what you said as well, Stuart. So budget for improvement or ability to change. Sorry, could you expand slightly on that one if you don't mind?
Yeah, so obviously once you go there and you start working at the organisation, you then say, right, okay, so what's going to be different? How am I going to make this different? And what's going to change as a result? So that was the first part of it. And also getting through sifts as a separate question, because I seem to find that things get to a certain, or you put in the application, either don't make it through the sift or then get into the interview and then don't get the offer.
Yeah,
so,
okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So from a candidate point of view, yeah, okay, sorry, that's where I was kind of going from. Yeah, so I mean, from a candidate point of view, looking at job specs, it is really just trying to mirror what the job spec says. I would always recommend writing a CV and application specifically for that job spec. Now, in terms of kind of looking for that improvement when you're in a company, it's really difficult because sometimes in the sifts, like I know when I'm working for Scott Logic and we do our own sifts, it goes to a hiring manager as well. So it's looking, a lot of it's kind of keyword searching, a lot of it's kind of that experience and demonstrating it. So as I say, look at the job spec and look where it's really asking you. Don't be frightened to reach out to the recruitment. Just say, look, would you mind me having a 15-minute informal conversation, just so I can get a better understanding of what it is you're looking to achieve from the role? And then you can really tailor that. And if you make that kind of, if you reach out and do that, you shouldn't really get any pushback from a recruiter, really, organisation or agency. They should have that kind of ability to help you on that one.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Stuart. So me again, and can we come back to this issue that seems to be a new phenomenon, and I think you've talked about it, was the ability to change your job without changing your desk. You just move from one side. You work at company A today, and you went for company tomorrow, and you never even leave your home office. So how are we going to compete against that?
It's a really difficult one, and if I'm perfectly honest, competing against that right now is a massive challenge. A lot of it probably will kind of branch on to kind of the funding that organisations can get to compete with those salaries. We have seen a lot of the North East salaries rise over the last 18 months. As I said, I think that will come back down because we can't realistically kind of keep that going. It will get to a point where it'll have to balance out at some point. Now, because like you say, we can literally just pick up and move a job without moving from your chair. It's all about actually going back to that regional aspect. What can we offer? We've got that community here. We've got that network. Some people do want to work remote forever. Not everyone does. And it's actually making, kind of reiterating that point to people. If you want to stay in the Northeast and you want to kind of have that access to the office and things like that, we're here. It's really good to kind of stay in there. We've got loads of initiatives going. We've got Dynamo. We've got kind of other initiatives. We've got funding there available. Let's kind of shout about it. Let's work together and make it so that we don't see people, we're not losing talent to Edinburgh, London, wherever, because most of them will come back. I think certainly now in the next 6 months, we are going to see businesses ask people to come into the office. So people working remotely at the moment who have got London jobs, I have already seen kind of 2 or 3 people in the last month leave jobs because they've been asked to go down to London, where they're already northeast based and they've got young families. So it was great while the pandemic was going on. Now it's not so great, especially with the family working. So I do think it'll balance itself out, but it's just more reiterating that point of actually the northeast is a fantastic hub. I think at the moment we're ninth in the growth hub in general, outside of cyber as well, just in general. But we have so many funding opportunities available. We have so many different initiatives going on as well that it just, if we work together, we'll get the people back.
So have you got any good examples of people having to going this kind of extra mile to make it to make the region more interesting when it's a job that is really anybody can do from anywhere? This is a real challenge for us, and so are you aware of any companies that have done this extremely well and be able to recruit people from globally, I suppose, from the Northeast?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the problem that we've got globally as well is Brexit hit. So not only do we have our general sponsorship and visa sponsorship from, kind of your America, Africa, things like that. It's, India being a prime example, a lot of applications do come from India. So the companies that do offer sponsorship at the moment will be the companies that we will probably see succeed a lot, and especially with the kind of the EU settlement and things. Anyone that's got EU settlement now is in a really good position. Anyone that doesn't have that, obviously, again, we're going to have to look at the visas and the kind of sponsorship in that aspect. So any companies that have been a bit more forward thinking of having that, because there are a couple of companies in the Northeast. I know Capital already do it. I know Accenture do it. Scott Logic in the process of doing it. So there is that element of bringing people to the region, of actually let's bring people to the Northeast outside of the UK, not just in that aspect. But we've also seen companies who can't compete with salaries offering other benefits. So I'll use Scott Logic for an example, because obviously I'm working with Scott Logic, so I can talk in a bit more depth. But they've really looked at internally, keeping people happy and making sure that people don't leave. So every single employee in the business, whether they're a consultant or a non-consultant, so non-billing, actually gets a £1,000 personal development budget for you to spend on your career to ensure, it doesn't have to be related to Scott Logic, it's just for you to kind of look at your career. And you also have 2 personal development days as well to actually match. So, if you want to take some time out to do an exam, you've got those 2 days to do that as well. So learning development time. So things like that, it's, it might not seem a lot, but actually it means a lot to the people in the company, because it feels as though you're actually investing in them and returning that. And that actually makes people stay. And particularly for, Scott Logic, Newcastle is their headquarters, and we really kind of use that as a flagship office to promote throughout.
So when I've been recruiting people, I always try to imagine them working in the organisation, and it's quite easy early on in an interview to tell whether they would fit or not. Have you got any tips for people, for either people employing people or being employed, how to manage that expectation, how to work out what kind of person you would fit in or not fit in, as the case may be?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of pinpoint, especially when you're doing things via Teams. It's a lot easier to interview and get people's personalities when you're doing it face to face, because you can just, it's the 10 minutes before the interview when you're kind of in the lobby or whatever, when you're waiting, and that general chit chat rather than being in that interview. But I suppose it's hard to answer, but what's really important, and what's really important for everyone to remember, is that 9 times out of 10, people will employ someone who has the passion and determination to go and do something and might be missing 1 or 2 skill sets. If someone has 10 out of 10 skill sets but doesn't necessarily have the right cultural fit personality, there's a lesser chance of them being hired. Someone would rather have half the skill sets ticked but have the right kind of personality. And I think do some digging at the company website. Most companies nowadays will have their kind of company missions and values and their kind of aims on the website. Do some digging, ask around the network. Newcastle's a very, very small community. There's a lot of people, but everyone knows each other. You know, there's always kind of, you know, that if you don't know someone, that someone you know will know them. It's just asking around. You'll get a really good feel for the personality and the culture quite quickly. But it's just a general chit chat. It's, if you're someone who's quite relaxed and you are very kind of tech driven, for example, if you go into a very pressurized situation of an interview where actually it's a tech test, you won't sit down, you will do this, you will do that, that's probably not the role for you. You know, you want that kind of, actually, let's sit down and have a talk through your CV. Let's have a talk through kind of your experience. What can you bring to the company? Those kind of interviews and that kind of chance for you to shine tends to be the ones that you know that's the right company to work for, and vice versa, the right candidate for the role.
So if you're out recruiting somebody, make sure your website's up to date, your values are on it, you're clear about it, and then you can measure those people against that. So I've asked hundreds of people why they come into work, and they always give the same answer. And sorry for everybody who's heard this story before, but they talk about money, but usually last, but they talk about being part of a team. They talk about a varied and interesting place to work. But above all, most people say, I want to make a difference. So coming to an organization to make a difference. So my view would be that those companies, when you're thinking about recruiting people, is to understand how you expect people to make a difference and allow them to get on with that. Okay, so Hannah, I don't think we've got any more questions, but if they do, they come through, we'll post them and ask you to answer them as it goes on. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break now because I might need to go somewhere, and so we'll come back in 10 minutes at 16:45. Is that right? Have we got that right? Yes. Thank you. See you in 10 minutes. Well, hello, and welcome back to everybody. I hope you're suitably refreshed. I know I am. And so next up, we have Peter from who's going to talk to us about exporting. And my understanding is that the UK is one of the leading countries in the world in terms of cybersecurity provision, and a great opportunity for us to use that strength and power to export our services around the world. Peter, are you there?
Hello. Yes, Phil, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you. No,
yeah, video's just coming through. Hopefully, there we go. Hello, I exist.
Excellent, excellent. Thanks, Peter. Right, so.
Okay, I will let me start the presentation. Let's see if this works.
While Peter's just doing that, if I could just encourage people to ask questions, put them in the Q&A or in the chat, and if not, we'll answer them either now or later on when we've got a chance. Okay?
Okay, great. Trying to share now. Let's see if this works. Okay, can you see the presentation?
Yes, I can.
Great. Okay, hi everyone. So Pete Thompson from UK Defence and Security Exports. I'm going to cover today, hopefully it won't be death by PowerPoint, but I've got quite a few slides to go through. Main areas are covering national cybersecurity strategy, then going through what government does and different parts of government, the cyber exports team and what we do, a bit of an overview of the cyber sector across the UK, our export strategy, and then finally, what is the DIT, Department of International Trade, offer to companies. So I think, as Hannah mentioned, I'm in the same position of sort of talking to a screen and I can't see anyone or anything. So probably best to take questions at the end. And as I say, I'll try not to do death by PowerPoint. Starting off, national cybersecurity strategy, so as everybody involved in cyber is aware of it. Big step up for this one for 2016 from the previous one, doubled the amount of investment, showed the UK government was serious about cybersecurity and wanted to aspire to be a world cyber power. The eagle-eyed will notice that runs out in 2021 this year. So normally we would have had the new one released by now, but with COVID, things have been slowed down. We are feeding into it. It is in, so there's been several draft versions. Haven't been given a date for when it will be released, but it will be this year. So the reason why it's relevant to us covers lots of different areas. The bit I've highlighted is under the develop section, stimulating growth in the cybersecurity sector. So DCMS, Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport, have responsibility for helping UK cybersecurity companies grow. DIT do that growing by exporting, so that's where we sort of link in there. And we do get some funding from the strategy, which is the National Cybersecurity Programme, and fingers crossed that will continue for the next programme. So government can be a bit confusing for companies, so trying to just unravel it a bit and how we're all involved. I've put Department for International Trade at the centre here, but I'm sure some of the other departments would have us on the periphery. But starting from the left-hand side, National Cybersecurity Centre is the technical authority for cyber, so we work very closely with them. Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, obviously work very closely with, because they have people around the world, exports, links in with the FCDO. They tend to do the more sort of diplomacy and diplomatic role, whereas we're looking at the trade bit. So it's encouraging them to look at trade as well as diplomacy. And then just the right to us, DCMS, as I said, they have the policy responsibility for cyber and digital, have grown hugely over the past few years. And they have a lot of staff involved in cyber. Over on the right-hand side, always got to have Treasury involved, because the National Cybersecurity Programme, they own the money. Cabinet Office are involved in the governance of it. And then we have BEIS, Business and Energy and Industrial Strategy, involved in protection of the critical national infrastructure. They have their own cyber team, and Department for Transport as well. So each of these units has a cyber team, and a lot with a cyber international cyber team. So even the Home Office has a cyber international team. So we try and work with them all and be the sort of single point of contact as necessary for companies. We put the Ministry of Defence in there as well. So the bit I work for is UK Defence and Security Exports. So we work closely with them on the defence side. As I've said, the Home Office have a role as well. So the team itself, part of Department for International Trade. Within that, we are one section, UK Defence and Security Exports, UK DSE. Within that, you have defence on one side, security on the other. Security is split between physical security and cyber, and here we have the cyber team. So very small team, only 4 of us, was 3 until last week when Roddy came in. So I cover the sort of working with SMEs and the ecosystem a lot with DCMS, and geographically, I cover Europe and the Americas. My colleague Nick covers government-to-government work, which I'll cover a bit later, and the Gulf. And Chris covers the policy side, so he's the one feeding into the National Cybersecurity Strategy and other documents, and he covers Asia Pacific. And Roddy's our military attaché, so he covers dealing with the Ministry of Defence. And if the cyber offer has a military component or is being sold into the military or government, he'll pick that up. And as he's the last of the team, we've given him the rest of the world, so he picks up anything else. I've put the cyber ambassador in there. We've had 2 now. The last one was Dr. Henry Pearson, who retired last month, so we're recruiting a new ambassador at the moment. It's at 2-star general level, so pretty senior and really good for going in as an ambassador, as the role says, to go and promote the UK, unlock doors, and sort of really help raise our profile. He's funded from the National Cybersecurity Programme, as are our cyber reps in the USA and the Gulf. So these are people seconded in from industry, so they really know their stuff. They're very technical, whereas civil servants tend to be more generalists. It's really useful to have someone on the ground who seriously knows what they're talking about. I've also put on the left-hand side some of the sector teams we have in DIT. As I've said, I'm from the Defence and Security Exports. Cyber can be sold to anybody, as I'm sure you all know, and not just military and government. So I work very closely with the other teams. I've put some examples down there, trying to push cyber into their sector offer. So it's a work in progress, but just if anyone does deal with us going forward, that if you're contacted by different people, this is just trying to explain a bit how it all works. So a bit about the sector. Hopefully people have seen this. DCMS do a sector report or sector overview each year. The current one is in draft and I think should be out in February, early February next year. The highlights are on there. Every year it's been growing. It's a really good news message for cybersecurity in the UK, and I know this year's figures are growing again on top of that. The statistics, you know, they are what they are. People may sort of question them. You can see the methodology in the document, but we'll see what people think as we go through them. But some of them may be a bit surprising. So before I actually go into the statistics, just to highlight, I don't know if people are aware, but we have across government there is agreed taxonomy for cyber. So this is really important because we've actually agreed it with each department. And we've got these 10 areas. So it's not perfect. There may be other areas where people think that it doesn't fit in here, or you may have an offer in more than one area, which can get a bit tricky. But it's really useful to identify which area your product or your service or your offer would fit into, and it helps us a lot. So when people come to us with requests for whether it's for SCADA or network security, we can make sure we put the right companies in front of them. And just an example of this is something that I did a couple of years ago, just sort of infographic to make it a bit more accessible, to show the 10 different areas and companies in the UK that have offers in those areas. Because we couldn't do all, 1,000 odd companies in the UK, we just limited it as for this prototype to companies who'd already been on missions with us or events with us. So this work is now being taken forward by Tech UK, one of the industry bodies, and hopefully they will be doing something covering all companies. But I'm still waiting for them to progress with that work. So into a few of the stats. Here we've got the breakdown by those solution categories, those 10 categories. Not particularly surprising, but cyber professional services at the top. It's pretty all-encompassing. And I know for this year there's been some developments, lots of work and interest going into SCADA and ICS. Training, awareness and education, I'm surprised that's so small. There's a lot of companies that offer that, but perhaps it's because that's not their main offer. I don't know, but again, quite interesting. If you have an offer that's in the sort of lower down area there that we don't have as many offers in, it's really useful to sort of know about that. So when we talk to other countries or companies, we know what we have in the UK. And the breakdown by company size, again, not particularly surprising. Most of the companies are SMEs. That's why I focus on SMEs. Whereas in the defence side, it's mainly big primes getting all the big contracts. Cyber companies can scale very easily, especially when the offer is a service rather than a product, and it can be easy to export and easy to sell. So hence encouraging people to export where possible, despite the size of the company. Okay, so breakdown by region. Phil might not be too pleased with this one, but again, not surprising that the focus is on London and the southeast there in terms of number of companies. That's specifically why we've got the Levelling Up campaign across UK government to try and escalate companies in the region and give a bit more focus and funding outside of London. I know there's a big cyber component in Wales and Northern Ireland, and they weren't very impressed when they saw these stats. But again, we'll see what they're like for next year. Moving on to clusters, which I know you'll all be aware of. So it's the DCMS own the sort of clusters and the management of the clusters, but they're a really good way for us in DIT to sort of get the message out, as I'm doing today. And I'll be going a lot more visiting around the clusters and talking to companies, answering any questions, trying to get people to understand and be aware of the offer and the support that we can offer as required. So they have grown over the years, the clusters, and hopefully now with more funding, they'll become more developed. There are also, as well as the geographic clusters, I only learned a few weeks ago, there's subject clusters as well. So again, a good way to get information out. We can feed in anything that's sort of happening with our sort of government hats on. And it's a good way to hear back from companies as well that are actually doing the work. So our export strategy. So this was, it's a little bit dated now. It's written a few years ago. It seems to have the obligatory sort of three areas with random names. But I'll go through those now and try and explain them a bit. So the first one we have is pursue. So this is really just our priority markets, which USA, Gulf and Southeast Asia. That's reflected by the fact we have cyber representatives there. We have one in the USA, one in Gulf. We were supposed to have one in Southeast Asia, but that hasn't happened yet. So those are our priority markets. But having said that, we tend to be quite reactive because cyber's in so much demand. If somebody comes to me from a country from Spain or Mexico, and they have clients over there who are interested in a UK offer and want to meet UK companies, as long as it sounds like a sensible event or something that will be of interest to companies, I'll still make sure that happens. The next bit is, which we called, or was called enable, just covers putting things into a more sort of sectoral approach. As I said, cyber can be sold anywhere. There tends to be a focus within government on selling to government or military, but there are a lot of other sectors out there that are pretty well funded as well. I think these figures are quite out of date. I think they'll be quite a lot higher now. We're certainly doing a lot in financial services because there's good regulation there to hang the cyber offer off, and there's a lot of funding there as well. But also healthcare is becoming bigger. So again, when you're looking to export, it's really useful to focus on a sector for a start, even if you can sell to more than one sector. Just find buyers are more comfortable with companies who've already worked in their sector. And then finally, the respond bit is just sort of the rest of the things that we do. So working with DCMS, linking up with the clusters. So working with ITAs, the International Trade Advisors. I know there is one in the Northeast. So we kind of work, or should work, hand in hand with ITAs. They help and offer sort of business advice for companies on how to export, and we're there to do the more sort of facilitation role. But always link up with the ITA if you can. And the devolved authorities, doing a lot with Wales, Northern Ireland, and more now with Scotland. Cyber Growth Partnership is sort of cross-government initiative with companies involved as well, so we're linked into that. And UK Export Finance, which actually I haven't been involved with that yet with a cyber company, but the offer is there for extra finance, I think, for large-scale projects. This is a slide I put together to try and clarify a bit about the role, but I worry I've made it more confusing. It's tested my PowerPoint skills. I think basically at the top we've got the buyers. So these are commercial businesses or government and military overseas. At the bottom are the UK companies that are selling, so the UK cyber companies. Now our role is very much just facilitating, so it's really important that the cyber team and the international trade advisors know what the companies do, where they're looking to go, what the offer is, the personalities in there, who wants to be in front of ministers, who wants to talk at various round tables. So we sort of use that information. Companies, of course, can sell directly into business or government. They don't need to or have to use the IT. We're there as a sort of support function. And what the team does with the ambassador, the cyber representatives and the team is working with people in posts, so in the embassies, consulates and high commissions around the world. And the people in post will sort of identify an opportunity working with the buyers, and then we push in the companies with our knowledge of the companies on that side. So I don't know whether that clarifies things or not. So what's the actual offer to companies? What can we do? So three areas really: educating, signposting, and then sort of selling or exposure opportunities. So the educating is just talking a bit about what we do, as I'm doing today. It's surprising how few people know that DIT is there to help. So the signposting side is a huge part of the role. There is so much going on in government and in voluntary organisations to help cyber companies. which is fantastic, but it can be very, very confusing. So we try and keep our fingers in all the pies just to sort of link people up, and we know what's going on. So hopefully we should be able to signpost if anybody has any requests. And again, referring companies to export control or UK export finance, we can link up with that. The selling and exposure opportunities, I'm going to cover a bit now. So these are the 5 different sort of areas that we do. The first one is the government to government stuff, which, as I said, my colleague Nick covers. And this is where the UK government sort of puts a wrapper on the sales to another government. So we'll get heavily involved, go out and talk to people about what their requirements are. I've got a bit more on the next slide, I think, about this one. Exhibitions are the large ones that are already over there, like RSA. Again, I'm going to cover that in a bit. Missions are where we take multiple companies overseas. Events are smaller ones where it may be 1 or 2 companies or 1 company doing their own thing. Again, I've got some examples of that. And then the domestic exhibitions. I was at the NEC exhibition last week, which was fantastic, really busy, and it's a good way to catch up with companies, keep the relationships going, and be aware of anything new that's around. So the government-to-government side, I haven't been involved in this because it doesn't particularly happen in my geographic areas, but my colleague Nick covers this. And it's generally focused on the Gulf and Asia because these are the regions that need it. And we will send somebody in from UK DSE or NCSC who will go and sort of identify what the requirements are. I think it's covered a bit on the next, on the next slide. So then they'll make recommendations based on their findings. And hopefully it will be UK companies that win the contract. That's the whole sort of point of it, of working with the government. So these are huge deals, but still there is an opportunity for SMEs to get in on these deals. But again, it depends on which area you're looking to export to, because as I say, they do tend to be in the Gulf and Asia. Some of the events we do, so we've got the domestic events at the top, and then the 3 main events that we have a pavilion at. So this is where we'll take a DIT pavilion, and we'll take up to, well, could be 6, 12, could be 20 companies, depending, take them over there. So RSA, JISEC in the Gulf, and Singapore Cyber Week. This has been sort of not been happening, clearly, because of COVID, but the hope is to start them again next year. We may be changing RSA to Black Hat, talking with Michael, who's our cyber advisor over there. But it's a good chance to either go on the stand, or you can come as part of the group that we take over, so sort of Team UK, and there's lots of various drinks and events and that kind of thing. The trade missions, which tend to be a bit smaller than that, so we may sometimes have a pavilion and event if it's an associated event, or it could just be something where somebody in country has said there are a load of companies who are interested in the UK offer. And it's a good way of bringing lots of smaller UK cyber companies that wouldn't normally be able to get in front of that kind of audience. So you all sort of come together and get a certain amount of time to pitch or to talk. It's just a way of sort of opening that door. So as you can see, quite a few different areas all over the world. And an example of this, so this one was the Spanish banking sector. So I was contacted by colleagues in Spain saying, look, we've got all the big banks in Spain. They know cyber's an issue. They've heard that the UK is good at cyber. So can you put some companies in front of us? So we found out from the companies the areas that they were interested in. We sent out an application, a request, and I think we had about 41 companies apply to that. So in this instance, we went to the banks then with those applications, and they sifted what they wanted. Whereas sometimes, if they're not savvy enough to do that, we will sift the applications. But so the companies go over. There's events put on. Most of this was a physical event because it was a while ago, I think. Physical. Oh no, this was April 21. No, this was virtual one. Sorry. But generally, the physical ones, they will have events in the embassies where it all sort of looks nice, attracts lots of people. So it's a really good way to open doors. And another one, so this was a single event for a company that we've worked with who had a very specific offer. They had interest in Poland and already had connections there, but they wanted to spread that out a bit. So they worked with the embassy over there to host an event. I think there is a charge for this kind of thing. It does depend on each embassy. But again, a good way of using something sort of to promote the UK and that they're from there, but also get access to a sort of nice area to host people. So I've rushed through that a bit because I didn't want to take up too much time of just with the presentation, so I can escape end the slideshow now. There we are, back to normality. So yeah, I don't know if there are any questions that have come up from that, or happy to answer anything now.
Yeah, certainly I've got some questions. Peter, it seems to have fallen on me to ask questions. I'm the voice of people who don't want to speak up. But
I know everyone. That's fine.
I'm really interested in these trade missions, or the opportunity for UK companies to get abroad. What kind of company do you have to be to get onto these kind of missions?
So we have all sorts. We have companies from sort of 1 or 2 people right up to some of the really large primes coming with us. So it really depends. If you have a product or a service that's ready for market, and you have the capability to scale and export, then we're very happy to get people involved. I suppose the area where it's a bit more tricky is if people don't yet have a product and they're not yet ready for market, because there can be an argument to go and raise your profile and go overseas, but it really depends on the aim of the mission and what it is. But yeah, I think the basic answer is anybody who is interested in exporting.
And so would you suggest that they have it would make sense to have a viable product within their domestic market first before they really think about it?
Yeah, I think so. We have a lot of companies who export more than they supply the domestic market with. That's not unusual at all. But yeah, I think to be able to get a sale, I think to have a provable product that's in the domestic market is really useful.
Okay, so what makes a good exporter? What is there a profile of somebody who is fit, or is it?
Yeah, good question. It's somebody who has thought about it a lot. We get a lot of companies just say, oh yes, we'd like to export, that would be good. You need to sort of think about the areas, and we can help with this, and international trade advisors can help sort of prompt. It's what are your markets? How much is it going to cost? So we get companies who will go to America, but you're not going to get one deal by traveling over there. You're going to have to go over several times. So there's got to be some funding to do that, or you'd focus somewhere on a different market in Europe, or a cheaper or more accessible market. So it's somebody who is happy to put the effort in with some assistance, and knows what they're hoping to get out of it, I think.
Okay, so the story you told about the Spanish banks, I think, was very interesting, because they approached the UK because there's a perceived strength within the UK in that area. Is that the model that tends to follow, that people, foreign companies or foreign purchasers are looking for areas in which the UK seems to have an expertise?
Yeah, I think we are seen as a world leader, and of course we try and push that. We've got a very good reputation. Our products and services don't tend to be the cheapest. We can't always compete with China and India, but we are seen as reliable and trustworthy, which are key points in cybersecurity. And companies who have delivered there, we've got a very good image in the UK, rather than just going and dumping kit and leaving people to get on with it. We will actually teach people to use it, go back and help. And so it's sort of playing on that good reputation. It does change, so different areas. If you're selling to France, you might not want to go and fly under the British banner quite as much, but certainly in the US, in the Gulf, in Asia. It says a lot to come under that UK banner, which is what we try and promote a bit. Yeah.
So is there an argument then to that's too close a question, but you know what I'm going with, to really think about what the UK is good at, what the strengths are, and build focus your products on that kind of area? Would that have a greater chance of export ability?
I think it depends on the market. I mean, we do a lot of work with the US, and generally they don't tend to be too bothered. If it's the best, they will buy it. Whereas, other areas, they are more interested, especially sort of Japan and areas like that. It would be a bit more about the sort of reputation. So it really does depend on the market. And that's why it's so useful for us to use our people in embassies and consulates who are often locally employed. They live there, they know the area, they're in the market. So they can talk about the peculiarities, even down to what you wear to a meeting is totally different in Italy to what it is in the US. So it's little things like that I think are really useful, and you get that insider knowledge.
I think I go away with my Cyberfest t-shirt in the States.
Of course. I see, Phil, there's a few questions about sharing the slides. Yes, I'm happy to share the slides. I've sent you a copy, Phil, so if you want to distribute them, there's nothing in there that can't be shared. So yeah, that's fine. So
that was really good, Peter. Thank you. And I think for once now, I can kind of understand how central government is sort of hanging together.
I know. I'm still learning. Every department seems to have an international cyber team, which is great, but it just needs some organisation. So yeah, we try.
Excellent. And just my final comment: that the stats may not look great for the Northeast, but they were at 1% last year. They're 2% next this year.
So there you go.
And I could talk all day about the machinations of the Strat survey, but there you go.
I bet.
Anyway, thank you very much, Peter. Please, if you have any questions coming forward, just send them in. We'll get them sorted and answer them along with the slides. So thank you very much for that, Peter. Next up then is Simon. Simon Hansen, who's now with NEPO, who's going to talk to us about sort of doing business with and tendering and that kind of thing, aren't you?
I am. That's what you asked us to speak about, Phil. So ever compliant, I will talk about that. I'll just share.
Then, are you?
Pardon?
You're going to talk about compliance.
There will be a part of that. As you know, procurement is all about compliance. Right, I'm just going to... Right, well, afternoon, everybody. As Phil said, I am still Simon Hansen. I'm the Economic Development and Policy Manager here at NEPO. So I joined NEPO back in January, after having been with the Federation of Small Businesses for what seems like a gargantuan sum of years. So from that side, in terms of the procurement, it does still feel a bit strange that I'm now on the side that's getting told procurement's absolutely rubbish. It doesn't do anything for anybody. It's really difficult and really tough to comply with. So hopefully, by the end of this presentation, I probably haven't answered all of the questions, but I've given you some confidence to go forth and to pitch. Now, there was a couple of poll questions that we were going to have. I don't know, are they still around, Phil? Do you know? Ah, perfect. Here we go. So yeah, so just to get a feel from you as the audience, yeah, there's just a couple of questions there around, have you pitched for public sector contracts, and then did you win the contract? Just so I can get a feel for where you all are in terms of that public sector procurement stuff. Right. All right. So, yeah, that's good feedback. Unfortunately, so yeah, so about 50-50 split around winning the contract and not winning the contract. Champion. Right. Well, thanks for that. That gives a flavour of where you all are. So as it says there, what I'll cover off over the next sort of 5-8 minutes is a bit about NEPO, where the current opportunities lie, where the future opportunities will start to come up, something around the national procurement reforms, which I know doesn't sound that inspiring, but there is a couple of bits in there that will be really relevant in terms of the future direction of government policy and how you can get involved. And then just a last slide there around some of the things that we've seen from our end in terms of contract submissions or tender submissions. So just a few very sort of basic tips there around how you can improve your chances. Because as I say, since I've been at NEPO over the past 9 months, there's been some common themes through the responses that we've seen to some of the contract opportunities that we've pushed out. So who's NEPO? So since 1976, we've delivered this ambitious collaborative work program across the Northeast. We've got, on behalf of the 12 Northeast local authorities, the solutions and frameworks that we've got are also used by over 700 associate members from right across the UK, including the UK public sector, from all over the place, so the Metropolitan Police, right through to the ONS and everybody in between. And at NEPO, we've got a team of about, well, now 32 employees. We've just taken on 2 new members of staff this week. So yes, we're a small team who really wants to get out there, understand the needs of local supplies, regional supplies, and really to be able to help you win more and more contracts so you can deliver and achieve your ambitions that you have as a business yourselves. So just where the current opportunities lie, because one of the things that we do get asked a lot is, I'm looking for some new tender opportunities, I'm looking for contract opportunities, where do I go? So at the current time, across all of these sort of the 6 bullet points there are literally billions of pounds worth of contract opportunities. Not all will be relevant to everybody in the audience today, but it is well worth checking out them all just to see if there is anything around what you do, particularly as the interest in around cybersecurity is really ramping up. We're starting to see that creep into more and more local procurements as well. Around that, being cyber secure is one of the sort of big tick points for a lot of local authorities in the wider public sector. So in terms of where, like I say, where those opportunities are, we've obviously got our own NEPO portal, which hosts the opportunities from the 12 local authorities in the wider public sector as well. So it's well worth registering for that. I would say that, wouldn't it, given that I work for NEPO. There is the digital marketplace at a national level, again, where you'll be able to register what you do, get involved and be able to sort of showcase the products and services that you offer. The find a tender service is for bigger opportunities. So those are opportunities worth more than about 120,000 and right across the UK. That replaced the wider sort of OJU sort of service that was there before the UK left the European Union. Contracts finders for contracts under the 120,000, and again, that's from right across the UK. So again, if you're looking for sort of 10, 20, 30,000 pounds worth of opportunities, it's well worth getting on top of that and having a look and registering for that. And again, you do get alerts around what opportunities are upcoming, when the current contract opportunities finish, etc. The Compete For platform might seem a bit sort of strange that I'm bringing that one up, because it's largely focused around big infrastructure projects like HS2, Crossrail, etc. But again, what we're starting to see with Compete For is that there are some more national contracts that are going onto that platform, which again includes some of the bigger sort of infrastructure projects, including digital infrastructure as well. So it's again well worth having a look on that. And then the final one isn't quite a portal or a sort of platform that you would register on, but the Small Business Research Initiative is something that UK REF hosts. And again, it's an innovative approach around, it's a challenge-based opportunity. So they'll put out, that we're really struggling around some aspect of cyber or digital or whatever. And again, it gives a good chance for businesses here across the region to be able to sort of pitch for. Now, as a region, not to sort of dwell too much on the figures that Phil finished off from the last presentation around that 1% to 2%, but as a region, the Northeast doesn't really get its fair share of SBRI. But again, it's not that widely advertised across the region of where those opportunities are. And again, the way that the SBRI works is that you'd put a pitch in, tell whoever's hosting the competition how you would win, or how you would develop a product or a service to be able to tackle that. And then it goes through a number of stages, which finishes off at a procurement stage, which is why I've included this on this slide here. Where the future opportunities are coming, again, I'll just be very quick around this. And again, that level opens up where national government's really going. So we've got the Build Back strategy on the left. That encompasses absolutely everything and replace the industrial strategy. And within that, again, there's something in there around innovation, around digital, around cyber. So again, it's worth having a look at that, because that's going to drive a lot of the national government's spending plans. The bit in the middle, the National Infrastructure Strategy, again, there's something like £650 billion worth of infrastructure that's going to be delivered over the next 10 years. And again, within that, again, there's this digital infrastructure as well. So again, from a cyber and security and cyber perspective, it's worth checking that out, because there's going to be a large amount of investment that goes into that area. And then the final bit on the right, and it's difficult to try and find a good image for levelling up, is around the levelling up agenda. So again, what we're starting to see at a local level through that sits underneath that levelling up agenda is things like the community renewal funds, etc. But again, there's going to be digital infrastructure that's put into that, which again is going to require some cyber security and really a lot of cyber skills, more broadly, some digital skills that are within that. And from all of those three, what you'll start to see flowing down into the regions is some of that starting to emerge, whether it's infrastructure projects that are being delivered here, or whether it's things that the local authorities and combined authorities have pitched for within all of that as well. So again, there's something within that just to keep your eyes out and keep looking for, because we will start to see some more ambitious plans come as we want to recover from the pandemic and then really drive that economic growth right across the Northeast and wider. And then the national procurement reforms. So again, I know this isn't the most sexiest of subjects to really be talking about, but on the left-hand side there is a procurement bill that's due to go through Parliament early next year, and it's the bit from the middle statement, the National Procurement Policy Statement, that really is going to be cemented in that bill, which is, as you can see at the bottom there in point 6 around the action of PPN 521, is that every contracting authority now has got to start thinking about the national priority outcomes that the government wants to achieve, which includes creating new businesses, new jobs and new skills, and then improving that supplier diversity, innovation and resilience. So I think it's in that last bullet point where we really need to see suppliers really putting the pressure, if you like, onto the public sector to say, I've got an innovative product, I've got something that will deliver the wider ambitions that we have both within the region and also nationally. So now, contracting authority, what we'd like to do is to have a chat with you as to how we can shape that procurement so that it delivers the outcomes that you want to achieve, but recognises that we are going to be able to create new jobs, new skills, and improve that supplier diversity across the piece. And then the other procurement reform, which is really just to sort of to let you know, because it comes in at the end of this month, is that PPN 621. So from the end of this month, what the government's going to require is that every supplier has a carbon reduction plan in place for contract opportunities worth more than £5 million. For new start businesses, what they've got to say is, look, we're aware of the net zero ambitions that the government has and we're working towards becoming net zero by 2050. The reason for putting that in is because what you'll start to see in terms of broader supply chains is that will start getting fed down from tier 1 throughout the tiers as to what's expected. So if you're looking for supply chain opportunities outside of the public sector or even in the public sector, that'll start to really sort of rise up around the net zero ambitions that the government has. But going back to the procurement bill, I think what's really important from a Northeast perspective is that procurement bill does what the region needs to see it do. So in terms of, again, whether it is that creating new businesses or it is improving the supplier diversity, we've really got to put the pressure on to say, if you want to achieve national government, those broader aims that you have, whether it's levelling up or net zero, or it's improving the sort of supplier base, we really do need to get that national, the procurement bill really working for the Northeast in every part of the Northeast. And then this is the final slide around improving your chances. So again, as I said, over the past 9 months, we've started to see different sort of bids coming in for different contract opportunities, and some common themes really come out of them. So I think in terms of improving your chances, it is to register for the opportunities where they are in those platforms that I outlined on the third slide there, but also to go on to that second point, it is to approach potential buyers across the public sector. I think what we found is, and I can say this again, having been relatively new to NEPO, is the amount of times that we get pitched from suppliers around a product or a service that you have. It's very minimal. It seems really strange that it's in the private sector you would work with businesses, and again, as the last presentation sort of outlined, to sort of keep pushing. You wouldn't go across to New York and then expect to get a bit of business off one trip necessarily. It's the same within the public sector as well. So just treat it like it is the private sector, that you've got to build up that relationship with whoever's buying, really sort of get, outline what you do, how you do it, what the potential opportunities are, etc., so that you can really deliver for local authorities and the wider public sector. Because again, across the sector, the specialists in procurement, but not specialists in every area. So again, that approaching them and outlining what you do and how it can benefit and what benefits it can bring to the public sector really does make a difference. But again, procurement people don't have two heads and speak Swahili. We are normal people that are open for a conversation, and right up until the point of when a tender gets issued, you can have that conversation with them to be able to shape and outline what's needed in a tender opportunity. The third bit, and the third point there about taking part in market engagement, what we've found in some local authorities across the region is those that take part in the market engagement and really continue that dialogue with the local authorities do stand a better chance of winning contract opportunities, because you get to understand what's being asked for. You can probe and push to see just what it is and how it would work and all the rest of it. Those that don't necessarily take part in that market engagement, again, it's not a direct correlation, but we found that there seems to be that misunderstanding of what's expected within the tender document or within the contract opportunity. So it's again just to take part and to, as I say, to really have that conversation. Yes, it takes time, and I know that time is of huge importance to all suppliers, but really it is about just getting that better understanding of what's expected. And the fourth point, and again, the fourth point here is something that we've started to see, where it's almost been a bit of a copy and paste from suppliers around opportunities. So we've seen stuff which doesn't reference the opportunity that we've put out or some of the wider public sectors put out. So again, it's not just to sort of copy and paste and drop it into the similar questions that are always asked at the same times, if you like, but it is to answer the question that is asked. The way that a procurement sort of contract would flow is that you would outline what is being asked and then ask you to answer that question. What we've started to find is that it's the question you want to answer gets answered rather than the one that's being asked, if you like. So again, it is just to focus on what's being asked within each of the questions, and just outline that, and always outline how you would be able to deliver what they want to deliver, rather than it being a generic offer around, we offer, for argument's sake, cybersecurity training or cybersecurity support. Really get into and get into what it is that you do and how it would work within the contract or tender opportunity that you can deliver. And then and I'm sure for those of you that have pitched for public contracts, what you'll start to see a lot more of is this social value aspect being included in all procurements. And what that tries to do is to be able to say, and touches on the procurement reforms slide, if you like, is, all right, we can get the quality, we can get the cost, we can get the compliance all sorted out, but what more can we do within a procurement contract to be able to deliver some of those broader ambitions that we have, whether it is growing job opportunities or starting apprenticeships or reducing the climate emissions that we have across the region. Within that, in terms of the Northeast priorities around social value, we have included a measure around cyber security and cyber efficiency, if you like. So there is something where it will be included. You'll see it in regional contracts, you'll see it popping up in local authority contracts as well across the region. And again, it's just to think about what else can you offer in terms of from a tender perspective. So could you offer could you do some school visits? Could you offer a way of taking on new staff, or could you outline the way that you'll be able to reduce the climate emissions that we have across the region? And again, within that, typically, the social value element of any contract opportunity is around about 10%. So it's never going to win you a contract, but it could start to lose you a contract if it comes down to a few percentage points in terms of what you've pitched for. So that 10% can be a bit of a godsend in terms of that social value offer. And again, within that social value piece, it allows you just to really outline what you do as a business and how you operate and what difference you really make within sort of local or regional communities. From a Northeast perspective, But again, from a national perspective, you'll see it creep up in contract opportunities right across the piece. As an example, in Manchester, that social value element is worth 20%. So that is a big, big offer in terms of what's being asked for over in Greater Manchester. And then the final thing, the final point, and again, this comes back to almost the reverse of not being pitched, is it's the feedback. No, we rarely see any requests for feedback in terms of, we put in a tender, whether it's successful or not, as to how to improve and, to really understand how it was looked at, how it was scrutinized, etc. And that will allow you to then be able to build that feedback into future contract opportunities. So don't be afraid to ask for it and to ask for an hour or whatever of whoever's led the procurement opportunity. Really do just say, well, look, this is what I was trying to convey or what I was trying to get across. How could I have improved my submission around that? So again, it's free of charge. It's a godsend in some respects, because it gives you that, as I say, that opportunity to really learn, and then for the next few opportunities to put that feedback into practice. Now, I'm conscious of the time. That is the last slide that I have. If you've got any questions or any points or whatever that you have after today, then please do get in touch. Get in, send us an email, give us a call. I'm more than happy to help out in any way, shape, or form. And again, as Phil said at the start of this, I have come from, I do feel like a poacher turned gamekeeper, in that up until sort of January this year, I was banging on the doors of the likes of NEPO and local authorities saying procurement's absolutely rubbish, it's not delivering for particularly smaller businesses. How on earth do you change all of that so that we can get that supply base to be increased? So now it is on to the side of, right, I get all of that. Now how do we deliver so we can deliver the broader ambitions right across the Northeast?
Thanks, Simon. That was really good. And many of these issues I've heard before, but I think people need to hear them over and over again to answer the question. And I think you made some very good points about building relationships. People think somehow that either this doesn't work with public sector or that they're not allowed to do this. It's not true. Yeah.
No. So again, the comparison I've used quite a lot is, you wouldn't walk into Nissan and then say, hello, Nissan, can I have, I'm a Washington-based firm and I do X. Can I have a contract off you, and expect to walk out and have a contract after that one visit? So it is about building those relationships. People do buy from people. And I think, again, it's, as I said earlier, it's that understanding of what is being offered, because there's a tendency of, when a contract comes up, it'll then go back out of, well, we'll just put that back out when a contract's run out, because that's what we think what we might need. But it is about that, as I say, really building that relationship in the way you would do in the private sector. You'd get out the network and you'd understand what businesses do, how you would do it. Do that with the public sector buyers across the region. I mean, even if you just start with the 12 heads of procurement across the Northeast, that's not a bad place to start, because again, once you're getting on the radar, you get an understanding of how the procurement system works. And by no means am I an expert in all of the public contract regulations that procurement's based from. But again, that procurement reform is when there is a push to reduce the number of regulations from the 350 or so that we have now to make it a lot more simplistic. But yes, I would say get out, go and meet the public sector buyers, have a conversation. There's no anti-competitiveness within that whatsoever. The only where you can't have that conversation is when a tender goes live. But even then, you can ask questions. You can have that market engagement, etc. But you can't influence the shape of the procurement contract. But up to that point, yeah, it's totally up to play.
Yeah. So when I was in the public sector and consuming or purchasing quite a significant amount of money and equipment, it was extremely rare that I ended up buying something from somebody I didn't know, a company that I didn't know. It was much more, we were much more involved with relationship building and people getting to understand what it was that we're actually buying rather than just what it said on the piece of paper. You talk about social value, Simon, and there's been a question from Stuart about how do we get more money into local SMEs? I don't suppose that people are allowed to just give you money because you happen to be local, as opposed to you can't decide on that sort of geographical, or can you, under social value?
So you can, So there is a thing where you can reserve under the threshold opportunities for SMEs and BCSEs across the region. There is a rule within that you can do. That's not one of the PBNs that I brought up, but maybe I should have brought that one up just to demonstrate that can be done. So it doesn't have to be done under social value, but where social value really does work is where you can get into that, in terms of, and I'm not going to go through all of the measures that are typically used, but if you say we've got staff in the region in terms of like how many local people we employ or whatever, or we will take on an apprentice, or as I said before, we'll reduce the climate emissions that we have, that will really bolster the sort of submission that you put in terms of that social value. But one thing I will say, and this is just from, and I'll just use local government figures for the moment in the Northeast. 3.5 billion spent by local authorities by the 12 local authorities across the Northeast. 2.5 billion of that stays within the Northeast. So it's not like we can always improve, can't we? Because we can get 3.5 billion or 3.5 billion. So I'm not going to be a total daft lad with that. But the reason for raising that is that we do a really good job. So there are opportunities out there. I know the perception will be that it goes to the usual suspects at the usual time. And, I suppose the old cliche of nobody ever got fired for using IBM. So there is that. But again, those people that have got those contracts had to pitch for those contracts. It is a competitive marketplace. So again, you can win those opportunities. And that's just in the local authority side of things. So yes, are there ways that we can improve? Of course they are. Is there a better way that we can do it so that we can help more local suppliers win more local opportunities? Of course there are. But that again is part of that dialogue. Again, come to us and tell us how we can improve things, how we can do things differently within tender opportunities. How do we work so that we achieve the same aims? Because I can promise you, there's nobody from a procurement perspective who looks at a tender opportunity and thinks, right, how do I not sort of get a Northeast supplier to help us deliver this? There isn't this sort of cabal or whatever that says, well, we'll push that one out to Manchester, or we'll push that one down to Leeds or whatever. But again, if buyers aren't aware of who's out there and who's offering what and when, how they're offering and all the rest of it, again, we just won't know. But again, I'm conscious that seems pretty clear because there are a number of opportunities out there, and I know all of the portals don't work as effectively perhaps as they could. I know I get feedback to say I've registered on X portal and I've put in what I think I deliver, and now I'm getting opportunities that just aren't relevant to us. I'm doing marketing and I'm getting barbering opportunities. Well, I'm not really a barber, and I'm not promising I'm not going into Monty Python when I do this, but there isn't the sort of, I'm aware that there are some things that we've got to fix on that side, but again, we can only fix it when we know what the problem are, where the problems lie.
Yeah, of course, if the local authorities decided to only buy locally, that would mean that we could never sell anything to any other local authority. It's a two-edged sword, isn't it? So I think the message coming from you is to follow the tender, fill it in properly, build those relationships, have the best products for them, and that's the best way to win the business. So can you just reiterate, Simon, as the sort of last point, what somebody who's answering who is going through a tender response is really looking for?
So what they're looking, well, again, you've summarised it quite neatly there, Phil, in that they want to know, they've gone through a whole piece around, this is what we want the tender contract or the opportunity to do. We've got a problem, we want to go out to the market to be able to help fix it. So there's that. But it is to read the question, answer the question that's asked, not the question that you think's being asked, to answer it in a way that within the word limit or whatever, and to really outline why you should be chosen. It's almost a bit like a job interview, isn't it? Why you should be chosen amongst all of the other suppliers that are out there that are similarly competing for the business. Up to that, up to the point of it being issued as a set of documents, get in there and really influence, what that tender document could look like. So it could be that, again, you referenced back in the day there, Phil, it could be that you've gone down one route to purchase something, but there might have been, a startup or a more innovative business that was offering something a little bit differently that you just weren't aware of. So again, it's to be able to get in and shape that to say there is another way other than just one of the sort of traditional bodies. And what I would say, is almost go out and find the support that you need as well for the tender, for filling in tender. You know, there are bid writers out there that do this stuff. There is the NEPO Business Club that offers, you know, free training to be able to go through what a tender is, how it should be filled in, and what public sector buyers are looking for. But again, is just to read the document for what it is, you know. So I can't say this enough. Answer the question that's there, and then be able to demonstrate what value you would be able to bring within that. Don't make it almost, again, it's a bit like a job opportunity. Don't just copy and paste from other bids that you've put in and drop it in, because, you know, we have seen examples of where, you know, a local authority in an area is suddenly now transported into a totally different area of the country and has been, you know, pitched something that they never really asked for. So there is something around just read that. Look, as I said before, I get that you know, there's a lot of forms to fill in, and there is a process that we have to go through. The reason for that is because of the public contract regulations. You know, that does guide and drive, you know, that value for money, to make sure that it's transparent, a totally open process, that it is compliant. So we get that. What we're trying to do is to make it much, much easier to be able to sort of comply with that regulation, but do it in a way that works for local suppliers. But yeah, as I say, this is the third time I've now answered in the question. Fill in, answer the question. That's there.
Yeah, and my final comment from me, Simon, is don't assume that one person is going to read this document. You may seem to answer the same question over and over again, but that could be because different people have been assessing different parts of that document. Anyway, thanks. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Simon, as always, and thank you very much for that.
No problem.
So, I was just going to ask you if you just bring me up, but that's perfect. Thank you very much for all our speakers. So Jane this morning, was it really that long ago? Jane, who started us off from NEL, talking about funding. If you've got any questions, please drop them in and we'll get those answered. Hannah, thank you very much, talking about getting the right people. It's a perennial problem these days. There seems to be a shortage of people all over the place. Peter, talking about export opportunities. Some really exciting stuff there, and I think there's a huge opportunity globally for the UK to export. And finally, Simon, about getting our own business sorted a bit closer to home. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, please write in and we'll get them answered. And if not, look out for our next event, which is tomorrow, around manufacturing supply chains, sponsored by Teesside University, hosted by Teesside University. That starts at 12. And we've also got the Northeastern area of great innovation in cybersecurity, which starts at 4 o'clock tomorrow. See you there. Thanks.